load this driver via a standard method via the SCM, the System Control Manager. So this is not the most stealthy method of loading a possibly malicious driver. Okay, this is mainly proof of concept that in fact you can do this. So that's kind of what I did here. I kind of took a little bit of an easy way out on this. Now, we have to coerce execution of this code. So what we can do is, since we've already loaded this driver and all this other stuff that's going to be able to let us monkey with the process memory, we can use write process memory to write the code to the various addresses that we need it. And this code will actually, like the code that I showed you where pass it a parameter for it shuts the, it basically tells TrueVector to go screw itself and not run. Well, basically not function for our purposes. That's basically what I did. Is I just, looked through a assembly dump of the program and then found a whole bunch of slack space where I could inject all of this code. And pretty much we'll just write process memory that there. So then to execute this, we can use a call called create remote thread to execute the code. That basically you pass it an address and I guess parameter you want to pass it, and it will create another thread in the other system that's running your code. We have to do this after we have changed all the strings and injected like the hook on draw text, all of this stuff like that. Because what's going to happen if you don't is you'll basically end up hitting memory that's you don't want it to hit. Like it could either be well, no, it's not going to hit on map memory because I put this in the slack space, but you'll basically hit stuff that you don't want it to execute, and your program will crash, and that's not so stealthy because it's going to basically, if you do manage to do this, and it will, the firewall will be dead, but TrueVector will still be running. And what it will basically do is not allow any incoming or outgoing TCP connections to the box. So basically, you kind of screw the user over and yourself if you if you weren't prompt in doing this. So, have another demo. Okay. Let's see okay, wait a minute here. Okay, so the first thing I did to prove that Zonealarm was working was pinged google.com simply. Now what I'm going to do is, there needs to be a little bit of background on something you're going to see before I show it. There will be an alert popped up when I run this program, but the reason why is that, okay, loading those DLLs remotely with Metasploit, they have a little test program called metservtest. And basically all it does is, for your DLL, it will open a socket and then pass that socket descriptor to your DLL and call this one function inside of it called init. And the socket thing here is kind of what the whole making it look like it's going to come up when you run this, but it won't, I promise. Because the reason why it's doing that is usually the attacker wants some sort of a socket handle so they can communicate back to the attacker and whatnot. But our goal here is, we don't want to we are not going to be able to have any further interaction and basically make our own connection. And one thing I really need to mention about this is, again, this is mainly useful for client-side exploits such as a web browser, a word processor, anything like that, that you normally do not want to be connected to the internet. Like, you can't do some find sock or find tag method, where you actually have a socket to the attacker already, and you're just going to reuse that to shovel, communication with the attacker and the own box over. So basically, the bottom line here is that I was too lazy to write my own program to load the DLL and run it, and if you know how many lines of code that takes, that shows I'm really lazy. So, on with the show here. So I'm going to CD into I'm running metservtest here, and then basically pointing it to the DLL that we want to load. And so, of course, that alert that I just explained pops up there. So what I'm going to do is, because it wants a socket handle, it wants a valid socket handle, I'm just going to point my to the port that it's listening on and go to it. So then it's satisfied, okay, yeah, so I did that, and basically for our notification, it'll pop up, you got owned twice, in just a little message box there. So now, did this actually work? So what we're going to do is ping google.com right there, and as you can see, nothing happens. So we win. Now, some other firewalls. I did a very detailed analysis of these first two firewalls. Now, how about we compare that to some other firewalls that are currently on the market and see, basically how they compare to either of these. So basically what I did was just some general tests. I didn't actually write code, manually and reverse the program, manually go through, find out where the exit function is, force a call to that, all that stuff, and write a payload for it. But just some general things that would kind of tell you the of the firewall in question. So the first one was code injection into another process. Like, what the method I used for testing this is I generated a payload with Metasploit, like, say a bind shell or a remote or a connect back shell, whatever you'd want to do, and then use some sed magic to be able to extract the correct opcodes from it, and then used OllyDBG to manually binary paste this payload into something like IC. So it's a bit of a ghetto method, but, well, sort of, but no. Oh well. So, and the next thing that we really, really want to look at is the ability to debug the main firewall process. As you can see, if you can do that, you own, the system. It's gone. And not to mention, we need to check whether syscalls were hooked in an obvious manner. And mainly I did this if the first two failed. You can't inject code just into a random other process. You don't have the ability to debug the main firewall process, but let's try to use the method that we used to own zone alarm, and then just load a kernel driver to do all this unhooking work for us, and see if it works. So, yeah, okay, forget that slide. I'll come back to it later. The first firewall I evaluated in the lesser evaluation category was Carrio. At the time of writing, the main process was able to be debugged. But it does detect code injection into a trusted process, but that's kind of like, I don't know, you lock your doors but have all your windows open, so, it's kind of like, yeah, we can still own it then. And it also did not seem to be able to detect a driver load, which is a big problem because, that doesn't combat things like rootkits or anything like that. And another firewall was Komodo that I evaluated. The main process cannot be debugged, and it does have non-obvious hooking methods, which is a big plus for that. And it also did detect code injection into a trusted process. But the killer here is it didn't seem to be able to detect a driver load, so we can still own it. Now, the absolute latest zone alarm. Now, I have to give the Zone Labs people props for this because they've drastically improved their product, and the current method that I'm using will on it. So basically the valuation of this goes, it does detect code injection into a trusted process, and you cannot debug the main firewall process. This was, of course, true for the first zone alarm version that I evaluated. And it also detects driver loads. So out of the other two that I evaluated, or I guess that would be, 5 in total, it's the only one that detected driver loads. But it does seem to have the same hooking mechanism as before. So for disabling this one is if you are able to get, remote ring 0 on the system or local ring 0, say there's like you send a malicious device IOCTL to a vulnerable driver, right? You're going to, basically have either kernel stack overflow or something like this. And the thing is, it seems that exploitation in this day and age is really moving towards that because, most people are focusing on user mode. Most of the that goes into hardening the system is all about, we're going to try to prevent stack execution in user mode, all this other stuff, heap protection, things that don't really matter so much inside of the kernel. So basically, if you're able to get this ring 0 code executed, you can definitely disable this hooking mechanism. So you're going to be able to, own it that way. But come to think of it, if you're really able to get ring 0 execution on that system, then you can do things like shovel in the rootkit, the full rootkit, remotely. So, that would be something interesting to try out. And I believe Alexander Tereshkin had done this on a version of, well, his method was not actually using a kernel mode exploit, but he wrote a pretty detailed kernel mode rootkit to disable this version that it basically worked through disabling with the indis.sys driver, so you have it basically monkeyed around with a lot of the really low-level networking stuff inside of Windows, and was able to bypass whatever alerts that would come up that way. So it kind of wouldn't really know what was going on. So basically, the conclusion here. Actually, wait, let me go back here because I remember I forgot this slide. What more needs to be done for I had written here? It really needs to be portable. Like I said, if you run this on your SP2, your non-SP2, or even your SP2 at another hotfix or something than what I did, you're going to get a blue screen of death, and that won't be fun. So it really needs to support different patch levels, and it needs to do a lot more dynamic resolving of the functions in question. And it would also be nice if it could resolve the KE service descriptor table. I think that was the right DLL export that was I had mentioned previously. So basically, be able to find the address of this system service dispatch table in memory more dynamically. So this would bypass a lot of the different rootkit detection mechanisms that do actually look for, oh, is someone going to try to hook the syscall table this way? Well, obviously, if they're going to try to import, do a DLL import on KE service descriptor table, then they're probably going to be doing something nasty. But this is not always the case, because then again, ZoneAlarm does this as well, and it's trying to benefit you. So, but basically, that's another feature that would be very, very helpful for this code. And it also needs to be a lot more intelligent in the generation of the hook on draw text, because again, I use static with this. You know what? Guess what happens if your say your draw text is actually at another address than it should be. You're going to get the hook written in the wrong location, and it's going to cause all sorts of mayhem to happen with your system. And you basically since jumps are relative, basically there's an offset. It just doesn't say jump and then just this address right here, because well, basically that would take too many bytes. And one important thing that I should probably mention about this is that this code does only work on, like I said, this code does only work on SP2, but the really, really, really nice thing about Service Pack 2 is the fact that, those hotfixes you apply every now and then? How it actually patches whatever it's going to patch is the fact it is a mechanism built in by Microsoft. What it has is the first 5 bytes function are basically, you always are going to know them inside kernel32.dll, and pretty much all of the other Microsoft system DLLs that are included with your system. So we have this 5 bytes, right? Now what's special about that? Well, let's think here. How many bytes does it take to jump to another basically D word in memory? 5. So you're always going to have the amount of bytes being able to